This is the Grim Reaper, personification of death, cultural icon, and a popular fixture of the New Yorker's famous cartoons for the last 80 years. In addition to his many appearances on late-night TV, early morning cartoons, and movies,
Grim Reaper, dude.
the Grim Reaper has appeared in over 104 cartoons since 1937. In this one, he's taking a coffee break, reaping the stale baked goods. Here, he's come to collect the soul of a dead toaster. And sometimes, he just wants to pop your balloon. The more you look at New Yorker cartoons that feature the Grim Reaper, the more you notice he's always the butt of the joke. So why do we do this? Why do we have this urge to laugh in the face of death? We first have to address why death has a face at all. Death is a lot like pasta. Every culture deals with it in their own way. The image of death as a shepherd or ferryman to the underworld has been found in cultures around the globe. Early North American cave paintings featured otherworldly characters accompanying departed humans on the path of souls. The ancient Greeks had Charon, and the Mexicans, to this day, celebrate Santa Muerte. Like many religious or spiritual icons, personifications of death are coping mechanisms to communicate a complicated, scary, or mysterious idea of what happens to your soul after passing from this world. The Reaper is no different. His dark and terrifying appearance is a reflection of the world he came from, a world gripped by fear in the midst of one of the deadliest events in human history, the Black Plague. The plague was a daily nightmare. It crept through Europe and Asia, killing hundreds of millions of people.
Images have a power to structure a human relationship with the event. An image like the Grim Reaper is a moral assurance that death is fair. There are all kinds of stories coming from the late Middle Ages about the fact that death is very democratic. It takes everybody. It takes bishops, it takes princes, it takes women, it takes children, everybody.
Medieval artists began using skeletons as a shorthand for death, as all around them, bodies were piled in the streets, rotting down to their bones. Danse Macabre depicted skeletons dancing and playing musical instruments to coax the living to their graves. Humans were fighting a war with death, and they were losing. Badly. We've come a long way from the earliest grim depictions of death. The New Yorker's cartoonists have replaced the grim with the glum, while laughing at the absurdity and complexity of modern life. For medieval artists, illustrating a society downsized by the plague, their Reaper used everyday objects like swords or crossbows. But it was the two-handed scythe that became the natural choice for the agrarian society of medieval Europe. The scythe was significantly more efficient and productive than the ancient one-handed sickle. With it, death could mow down huge swaths of the population. Death became a Reaper.
Rock the Yahawashi, 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 Hashem, Rakah, Padash. A double honor to the apostles, the elders, and salutations to you, sincere brothers, teaching in truth and in sincerity. This lesson will be entitled The Mocking of Yahawashi, hence the Grim Reaper. All right, B.
This is from mysendoff.com, and it goes into the origin of the Grim Reaper. First paragraph states, throughout history there have been...
You know what, bro? Read the It Is Believed slide,
It is believed that the Grim Reaper is based on the Greek god Kronos, also known as Father Time.
Right, so also known as Father Time. So that goes to show you how Esau basically mocks Yahweh and Yahawashi. All right, and let's prove that and get Daniel 79, bro. Because the Father of Time would be a reference to Yahweh. Okay, he's also classified as the Ancient of Days, man. Time, bro, if you want to say it, bro.
Yeah, I was saying he's also known as the Alpha and Omega,
right.
The beginning and the end.
That's right. Daniel 79, bro. You just read that point again. You read that point again about the.
It says it is believed that the Grim Reaper is based on the Greek god Kronos, also known as Father Time.
Right. So the origin of the Grim Reaper goes back to the Holy Scriptures. All right. And also, this lesson was inspired by a reference the elder Ainah man out there in New York. Okay, he through the spirit, when he mentioned that the Grim Reaper went back to Yahawashi, through the spirit, I did a little investigating of myself. Go ahead, bro.
This is Daniel chapter 7, verse 9. I beheld till the throne were cast down, and the Ancient of Days did sit.
The Ancient of Days did sit. The Ancient of Days is referring to Yahweh. All right, this is the reference point. Go ahead, bro.
Whose garment was white as snow,
Right,
and the hair of his head like the pure wool.
right.
His throne was like the fiery flame, and his wheels as burning fire.
Right, just proof through biblical doctrine, that the Ancient of Days is a reference point to the Most High. All right, D.
It says Chronos' ties to time and the harvest spawn the symbolism of the reaper's hourglass and Sith. Throughout history,
And if you know anything about a Sith, it actually is referring to a sickle. It's another term for a sickle. If you know anything about a sickle, it's a hook-like knife. All right, and also, who utilized this hook-like knife is actually reapers and vine dressers. Okay, this instrument is used to trim crops as well as to cut off crops. All right, go ahead, B.
throughout history, there have been different depictions of death, from the Valkyries of Norse mythology to the god Thanatos of the Greeks. But one of the most pervasive icons in pop culture is the Grim Reaper. Depicted as a skeletal figure cloaked in black, flowing robes, who hefts a Sith.
Right, this is going back actually to Revelation, the 14th chapter. The Grim Reaper goes back to Yahawashi. All right, mocking. All right, Esau knows, man. In order to make a lie, you have to understand the truth in some form, some fashion. And through the Spirit, Lord willing, this is an edifying lesson. Go ahead, bro.
This vision of death did not spring out of nowhere.
Come.
In fact, everything about him is filled with symbolism.
Right. So, what is this symbolism? Once Yahawashi returns, in referring to his second coming, he's bringing a lot of death. He's going to bring salvation to the elect. He's going to bring death to the 2/3 and the other nations, beginning with the Edomites. All right. Jump down, elder.
And so art began to depict death as a skeletal figure. This imagery is thought to have been pulled from the piles of bodies people would find littering the streets.
Right. So also a reference point, according in this article, it was talking about like a lot of people died during the Dark Ages. All right, and a symbolic format was utilized was the Grim Reaper. Okay, and if you know anything about the Dark Ages, our people was in control. It was also known as the Middle Ages. Okay, go ahead, Elder.
Usually death would be shown carrying some kind of weapon, whether it was a crossbow, dart, or something else entirely. At some point, the weapon was uniformly made a scythe,
Right.
a farming tool with a long handle and curved blade at the top.
And automatically you think about Revelation, the 14th chapter. Through the Spirit, you think about Revelation 14. Continue.
The scythe was adopted as the weapon of choice, as it felt as though death was mowing down humans as if they were grain in a field.
And that's what Yahawashi is going to do unto the ungodly, man. Go ahead, bro.
And several pieces of art depicted just that.
That's it. So now, with no further ado, let's go to Revelation, the 14th chapter, Shakai. And you can start, bro, at verse. Oh, go ahead, bro.
Revelation 19:13.
Break it down, too.
Do you have it?
No.
Revelation 19. Okay. And he was clothed with a vesture dipped in blood, and his name is called the Word of the Most High. I want to jump up real quick. In verse 12, it said, his eyes were as a flame of fire, and on his head were many crowns, and he had a name written that no man knew but he himself. And he was clothed with a vesture dipped in blood, and his name is called the Word of God, as it is written. And because when Yahawashi comes back, his whole vesture is going to be as though that it was dipped in blood from all of the bloodshed from the people upon planet Earth.
Yeah.
You know, hence going into how the reaper is coming to reap.
That's right.
You know, and because the earth has been sown in wickedness and evil,
Right.
but it has to be reaped, man.
That's right.
It has to be reaped out and sown.
That's
you know?
right. That's right. And that goes to show you, like, the depiction of the Grim Reaper. It stated that in the last paragraph, as Zaquan read how he was coming back and he was going to mow down a lot of humans. Well, if you, the elder just backed that up with the scripture, Revelation the 19th chapter. All right? So that Grim Reaper, the origin goes back to biblical context, which will be referred to Yahawashi as well. All right, let's go, Chicago.
Revelation 14, verse 15. And another
Start at
angel.
14, bro.
Revelation 14, verse 14. And I looked, and behold, a white cloud, and upon the cloud one set like unto the Son of Man.
Right, one set unto like the Son of Man. The Son of Man is referring to Yahawashi. The cloud is referring to a chariot. Go ahead, bro.
Having on his head a golden crown, and in his hand a sharp sickle.
A sharp sickle. Now, a sharp sickle is basically a hook-like knife. All right, and basically this sickle is used by vine dressers as well as reapers to assist with bringing in a harvest. Now, the reason why this sickle is sharp because it's symbolic talk for a quick or rapid destruction once Yahawashi come on earth, man. Like, go ahead, bro.
Verse 15. And another angel came out of the temple crying with a loud voice to him that sat on the cloud, thrust in thy sickle and reap.
So thrust in thy sickle and reap, going into the origin of the Grim Reaper. Thrust in thy sickle and reap, utilizing this instrument from a symbolic format to now it's time for this earth to be judged, man. Go ahead, bro.
For the time is come for thee to reap, for the harvest of the earth is ripe.
Right, so what's the harvest? The harvest is actually talking about the gathering of these wicked people for destruction. When you go into that term reap in the Greek, it means to cut off a crop. What's the crops? These wicked people, man. Beginning with this, the Edomites, as well as these other nations, as well as 2/3 of our people, man. Okay, so that angel is saying reap. Really, that angel is telling you how shall kill. Reap means kill. All right, gather these people for the harvest, utilizing that sharp sickle, that hook-like instrument, man, to assist with gathering this harvest, this great destruction, going into the second coming of Yahawashi, man. That's right. Go ahead.
Joel chapter 3, verse 11. Assemble yourselves and come, all ye heathen, and gather yourselves together round about. Thither cause thy mighty ones to come down, O Lord. Let the heathen be wakened and come up to the valley of Jehoshaphat, for there will I sit to judge all the heathen round about.
It's going to the valley of Yahawashi, the Most High's judgment. All the nations going to come together over there in the Middle East. And that's why it says in Isaiah, the 13th or 14th chapter, that the Lord of hosts going to muster the host of the battle. It's going to get all nations, and that's why the brother read in Revelation that Yahawashi going to have many crowns on his head. He's going to take over all these other nations that leave right now.
Put ye in the sickle, for the harvest is ripe.
Put ye in the sickle. Put ye in the sickle, for the harvest is ripe, meaning it's time to judge. Okay, utilizing the Most High's right hand, which is Yahawashi. Remember, that sickle is a device to cut off something, to cut off a crop. Symbolic talk for bring on the destruction. Judge in righteousness, man.
Pursuant to what Revelation, the 18th chapter, I said, as Babylon's sins has reached to the heavens. You know what I'm saying? It's ripe now because it's time for Yahawashi to come back and rectify things on this planet.
That's right. Just like if you have a fruit on a vine, when that plum is ripe, it's time to eat. When that watermelon is ripe, it's time to split it open, as well as the cantaloupe, as well as an apple on the tree.
That's what Yahawashi going to do to this earth. He's going to split it open.
That's right, brother. All right.
It says, all right, I'll finish up. It says, I'll start over. Put ye in the sickle, for the harvest is ripe. Come, get you down, for the press is full. The fats overflow, for their wickedness is great.
Right, the press is full. Meaning that basically, it's going to be a lot of people dying through this judgment, man. A lot of people will be killed due to not following, not hearkening to the law, statutes, and the commandments. Because you have to understand something. At this time frame, the will of the Most High is not done on earth. All right? But once Yahawashi comes back, then that format will be implemented, going into the will of Yahweh, man. As earth on earth as it is in heaven, man.
And you look at the word grim, it goes into dismal or gloomy. And that pursuant to Zephaniah 1:14. The great day of the Lord is near, and hasted greatly. Even the voice of the day of the Lord, the mighty men shall cry out bitterly.
You military men, you upper echelon men in the military. You mighty men, y'all going down, man.
That day is a day of wrath, a day of trouble and distress, a day of wasteness and desolation, a day of darkness and gloominess.
And that's the reason why Yahawashi will have that sharp sickle gathering the harvest for this destruction because of judgment on earth. Why? Because now the time is now, or at that time frame, the time is at hand during that time frame. Right?
A day of clouds and thick darkness, a day of the trumpet and alarm against the fit cities and against the high towers. And I will bring distress upon men that they should walk like blind men because they have sinned against the Lord, and their blood should be poured out as dust and their flesh as the dung.
Yeah, so that's what the Grim Reaper is all about. And Yahawashi bringing that judgment during his second coming, man. Right, go ahead, bro.
This is Exodus chapter 12, verse 23. For the Lord Yahweh will pass through to smite the Egyptians, and when he seeth the blood upon the lintel.
Right, this is Yahawashi in the Old Testament. And if you even search on the Grim Reaper using Wikipedia, they utilize that. Going to show you that Esau knows. All right, so Yahawashi was that angel of death. Also the Grim Reaper as well, man. Okay? He's judging at this time frame. Why? Because he conquered sin within the flesh. All right, but when we go back to the ancient times, Yahawashi was that angel. He's always been the right hand of his father Yahweh, man. Go ahead, brother.
And on the two side posts, the Lord Yahweh will pass over the door and will not suffer the destroyer to come into your house to smite you.
Right, so Yahawashi was that destroyer back then. And he's going to be that destroyer coming back during that second judgment. That's right. It's like not that second judgment, but that second coming, which is going into the second death.
Yeah.
All right? Go ahead.
So back in Revelation 14, 15. And another angel came out of the temple crying with a loud voice to him that sat on the cloud, thrusting that sickle and reap.
Kill. Thrusting that sickle and kill. Go ahead.
For the time is come for thee to reap.
Right.
For the harvest of the earth is ripe.
That's right.
And he that sat on the cloud thrusting his sickle on the earth, and the earth was reaped.
So what happened? Yahawashi started bringing that judgment. All right. He started letting them lasers go. Okay. As well as the archangel Michael, man, and the other heavenly host, man. They brought judgment. Go ahead, bro.
And another angel came out of the temple which is in heaven, he also had a sharp sickle.
Go ahead.
And another angel came out from the altar which had power over fire, and cried with a loud cry to him that had the sharp sickle, saying, thrusting that sharp sickle and gather the clusters of the vine of the earth.
Right, gather the clusters of the vine of the earth. What's the clusters of the vine? These wicked people, man. All right, go ahead.
For her grapes are fully ripe.
Meaning now it's time for judgment. Go ahead.
And it says, and the angel thrust his sickle into the earth and gathered the vine of the earth and cast it into the great winepress of the wrath of the Most High.
Right, because why? These wicked people have to be judged for doing wickedly, for not adhering to the will of the Most High.
Yeah, because you watch some ancient videos, not ancient videos, but you watch videos how these do ancient customs of making grapes or making wine, they all just be stepping on it and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So it's pretty much spiritual how so much bloodshed gonna be out here. You have shot come back.
Yeah, jump like this.
And it says, Isaiah 63:1.
Now this is actually gonna be going into like the harvest. All right, going into the wine press. Go ahead, bro.
It says, who is this that coming from Edom?
Right, Edom, so-called white people. Go ahead.
With dyed garments from Basra.
Modern day America. Go ahead.
That is glorious in its apparel.
The chariot. Go ahead.
Traveling the greatness of his strength.
Referring to the chariot. Go ahead.
I that speak in righteousness, mighty to save.
Referring to Yahawashi. Continue.
Wherefore art thou red in thy apparel, and thy garments like him that treaded in the wine fat.
Why? Because he has actually put in that sickle from a symbolic standpoint, and now he's reaping that harvest. Go ahead.
And trying to wine press alone, and the people that was done with me.
Which proves that the people are actually those grapes, those clusters of grapes going into that wine press, going into the judgment due to the second coming of Yahawashi. Go ahead.
For I will tread them in my anger and trample them in my fury, and their blood shall be sprinkled upon my garments, and I will stain all my raiment.
And that's that sharp sickle gathering that harvest. Okay, reaping meaning killing, providing judgment. All right, finish it out, Revelation 4.
Revelation 14 and 20. And the winepress was trodden without the city, and blood. Revelation 14:19. The angel thrust his sickle into the earth and gathered the vine of the earth and cast into the great winepress of the wrath of the Most High.
Right, because these people have to be judged. Go ahead.
And the winepress was trodden without the city, and blood came out of the winepress, even to the horse bridle, by the space of 1,600 furlongs.
That's referring to a lot of bloodshed because a lot of wicked people will be judged when Yahawashi returns. Okay, so when you think about the Grim Reaper, it's referring to the mocking of Yahawashi. All right, because Yahawashi will have that sickle to initiate judgment. You can end it with yours, bro.
This is Hebrews chapter 10. Hebrews chapter 10, verse 31. It is a fearful thing to fall into the hands of the living power.
Read that again.
Hebrews chapter 10, verse 31. It is a fearful thing to fall into the hands of the living power.
Because at this time frame, you actually gonna see Yahawashi in that angelic like force promoting judgment. All right, utilizing that sickle to reap that harvest, man. Then you're gonna have the missiles as well, man. So it pays you to do right, man, especially if you know how to do right. All right, Lord willing, this was an edifying lesson. Shalom.
Shalom.
The New Yorker's depictions of the Reaper have the tools to match the times. It's funny to imagine Death stripped of his iconic weapon and replaced with the latest trend in multi-blade technology, or giving him a microphone to kill it at the comedy club. Laughing can psychologically help us deal with trauma, and morbid jokes are a fixture of comedy.
Dude, bad news. You're dead.
But the New Yorker cartoons are playing to something more primal. The best satire speaks truth to power, like when a coworker cracks a joke about your boss, or Death being a stand-in for a corrupt politician. Comedy feels good when it's aimed at a perpetrator of injustice, and the Grim Reaper looms large at the top of that totem pole. Death is more powerful than anything or anyone, the perpetrator of the greatest injustice in the universe, that we all die. Here's the Grim Reaper's first appearance in a New Yorker cartoon. He's requesting a boat with muffled oars. It's horrifying to think of Death moving silently across the water, but it's less scary to think of the mundanity his job entails. This is why we so often see the Grim Reaper in pop culture, doing silly or human things. The Reaper was invented during the plague to cope with the horrors of mortality, and really, not much has changed. Despite our effort to cheat death by running on treadmills or eating kale, the Grim Reaper is always on his way. And while we wait for our time to come, all we can do is laugh. It may not be much, but it's a brief respite from the existential grip that death holds. After all, when death comes knocking at the door, he could just be a sore throat.
Weird one.
2 Ezra 15, verse 37. And there shall be great fearfulness and trembling upon earth, and they that see the wrath shall be afraid, and trembling shall come upon them.